I had an absolute joy packing as much transit as I could into just 48 hours in Lisbon, Portugal, but that doesn't just include the main city. Across the Tagus River, there's a whole lot more to see, with ferries, modern trams, and double-decker trains that cross the 25th of April bridge into the city of Almada and beyond. So for my final video in my series on transit in Lisbon, let's go take a look at the other side of the river. Now the bridge itself might look familiar to you, for most of my NorCal-based audience, like some kind of Golden Gate Bridge and Bay Bridge hybrid. And that is indeed how it was designed, by the American Bridge Company in fact, who did also build the Bay Bridge, but painted this one in the colors of the Golden Gate, namely International Orange. It first opened with 4 car lanes in 1966, which is now expanded to 6, and while plans had existed for a railway to be built underneath the road, it never came to fruition until 1999. It would be an Iberian gauge double-track line running at 25 kV AC electrification, which is linked to Lisbon's urban main lines on the north side and pre-existing railways on the south that head all the way down to the Algarve. So if you ever wanted to imagine what BART across the Golden Gate Bridge might have been like, come out to Lisbon. With this new rail connection came the launch of a new service, which would be known as Fertagus. The name comes from fer, which is short for the Portuguese word for railway, and Tagus or Tagus, which is the river's name in both Latin and English. Most trains that cross this bridge are from this operator, though you'll sometimes see regular CP-run intercity trains, and even their Alpha Pendular higher speed trains. The service starts at Roma Arreiro, a stop on Lisbon's suburban beltline. Being a private operator, I had to tap in a dedicated card reader, though the card I got for this trip was good for all the trams I took across the region, including the stuff that we'll see in this video. I just had to use what is known as the zapping fare system. Mainline trains call at the station fairly regularly, and it's sandwiched in between 2 metro stations, called unsurprisingly Roma and Arreiro. The trains on Fertagus are bi-level CP Class 3500 EMUs built by Alstom and CAF. They're identical to these sets used on some CP urban services, except with a white and blue livery instead of the red. And here it comes. I sat on the upper deck, and while the seats are padded well, it feels rather cramped up here, and right by the window is some kind of AC unit. Now Fertagus trains stop at all stations along the beltline, with this northern bit actually having 4 tracks. It makes sense though when you consider just how many services pass through here. We're now at Campo Lage, which is quite a complex station. It has 2 different sets of platforms, being the place where some trains from Sintra head into the tunnel to Rocio, other trains from the north go down to Alcantara, and as for us, well, we've got a bridge to cross. This is also the last stop on the Lisbon side, and now we're climbing up in altitude to join the lower deck of the 25th of April bridge. We'll be about 70 meters above sea level. The bridge crossing is the single defining feature of Fertagus, even incorporated into their logo. It's been a very successful service, almost too successful. Operations have always been a challenge, as while frequencies have increased fairly recently to never be worse than every 20 minutes, including on weekends. It's still not enough in some cases. At peak hours especially, even running at a higher frequency of 10 minutes and coupling 2 4-car sets into a huge 8-car consist have both done little to ease crowds. It doesn't help that they only own 18 train sets, which limits potential capacity. This is to be expected though, when you only have 1 railway that crosses the Tagus, and the ferries that cross it are not very frequent. Though it's hoped that that will change soon. The first stop on the south side of the bridge is Portugal, in the city and municipality of Almada, and where I got off the train. It's one of 2 stations where you can connect between Fertagus and the local transit system of the region, which is known as Metro Transportes do Sul. It's a modern light rail system that serves Almada and Seixal, with 19 stations and 13.5 kilometers of track, operated by the same company that runs Fertagus. The network is effectively one large Y with 3 different services that each use 2 of the legs. This is line 1, this is line 2, and this is line 3. Very simple stuff. 2 stops on this network connect to Fertagus, and 1 more connects to a ferry terminal. The trams here are built by Siemens, and unlike the classic tram lines in Lisbon, run on standard gauge with 750-volt DC overhead power. I've just boarded a service on line 3, heading towards central Almada. The ride felt very smooth and fairly quick too, which was helped by having signal priority. The top speed is only 70 km per hour, but for something like this, average speed also makes a big difference. There were points when we were feeling like a tram train at times, with full rate separation and maintaining top speed. The fare is also pretty cheap, and there's quite a bit of green track as well, which you can never go wrong with. Here in what appears to be Almada's main street, the MTS runs in the median and is very clearly a part of the urban fabric. I got off the tram and had a bit of a walk around this little area, which was rather quiet, but then again this was midday on a weekday, but further towards the ferry terminal is a lot livelier. I then got on the MTS again, this time on line 1, heading to the second Fertagus transfer station. And this bit of the network is where it really shines. Ridership was quite healthy, service was frequent, but most of all, the trams got quite fast, consistently. At the outset, Almada seems like just a small suburb of Lisbon, and in terms of the broader metro area, that is true, though this city on its own has 174,000 people across 70 square kilometers. The system is a great example of how modern light rail practices, when done right, can be a backbone for urban transit in smaller cities. Not only does it help you get around the region quickly, but also does a great job of feeding you into onward connections to Lisbon proper and the rest of the country, either by ferry or by train. There are plans penciled out to extend the western leg of the MTS, firstly to the town of Costa de Caparica, home to a beach that seems to be quite popular with tourists, and ultimately to the ferry terminal at Trafaria. From there you can get a ferry to Belém, which currently only shows up every hour, but that is quite an important spot in Lisbon and where I boarded the train to Cascais, of course. Speaking of ferries, there are quite a few of them that cross the river, but unfortunately I didn't have any time to ride them. And at last, I made it to Corroios, which is where I'm going to catch Fertagus for a second time as I head back to the central city. So as I cross the bridge again to Lisbon, this marks the end of my transit adventures in Portugal. It was quite fun for me to see how all the different modes come together. And while the physical intersections between them could do with improvement, they all provide excellent coverage of this vibrant and dense metro area. Just a shame that railway investment doesn't seem to be a very strong priority across the country, as antiquated rolling stock and poor upkeep of stations puts a dent in the overall rider experience. The recent closure of Coimbra Central Station, which I did want to go visit but again didn't have much time, is rather emblematic. It'll remain to be seen how the high-speed rail project goes that would hopefully cross the border into Spain as well. All of that said though, I'm really glad that I got to learn more about the transit in Lisbon and Portugal as a whole through this brief and very rainy but still action-packed trip. I hope you enjoyed my videos covering the country, but we're not done with Iberia just yet. Coming up after this, we'll head over to Spain where I'll finally get sunny weather, but most of all, I'll be showing you around the rich and varied transit in what is easily my favorite city in Southern Europe, Barcelona. See you then.